The next one is on well sites. Here you all are very lucky to be drilling in sites which are very close to locations, have good roads. Where I have drilled, that picture is down in Dominica in the Caribbean islands. There was never drilling done on that island. We literally had to go with 2 trucks in the tow to make sure that we could turn around that. We had to make new roads and go from there. Now, when you're making roads or when you're transporting stuff, make sure the transporter knows what he's transporting. Okay? Let me remind you all once again. Anybody from civil engineering and finance team? Anybody from the finance with EEP or with the ministry? No. Anybody from civil? Okay. Anybody from trucking, or who looks after the trucking at EEP? Who looks after the trucking and cranes? Is there a separate thing?
Yes.
Okay, now I'll ask you why I'm coming to this, I'll tell you the reason. You remember that cementing unit that we bought from Djibouti? Right? Where did it reach? It reached up to? Where did it reach up to? It came from China to Djibouti by ship. From there it came by road up to where? Nazareth, right? Right? Then what happened? Now I don't have to hide anything because we are talking real sense here. Okay? I'm trying to explain this thing in a very simple way. What happened to that one? Why? Road? Is it the road's problem or is it the truck operator? Road. So what should have been done better? The road should have been improved? No. What happened there? Because he went very close to the edge of the road, he tipped over, right? Am I right? So did he know what he was carrying? What was the cost of that cementing unit? I will leave that. That's why I was looking for a finance guy who could have told me what is the cost of the cementing unit.
1 million.
Pardon?
1 million.
1 million. If you can get me one, I'll give you 2. That's more than about a $2 million. Okay? The thing is, why I'm trying to tell you that's why I stopped there just a minute, is you've got something that you have given to somebody who does not even know what is carrying. Right? This truck operator did not know how costly equipment was there. Then, second thing, do you have an escort in front and back of the truck? Because he's carrying a big load, right? Yes. You should actually have had, in the US we normally have an escort in the front and the back of the truck. To make sure that if he's even coming to the edge of it, or if there is traffic on the road, they stop him before that. Now what happened after that? You used a crane to pick it up, right? Did you send a crane from the rig? You did not send a crane from the rig, as far as I know, right? It was a crane somewhere from the local person. That crane operator has never seen a rig or never seen a cementing unit. Now what happens there? On a cementing unit, you've got places where you can lift the load. If you see a container outside, you see there are specific points where you can lift a load. Am I right? Where did he lift it? If you have not seen the pictures?
Yeah.
You have seen the pictures, right?
I haven't seen it.
Why didn't you see it?
Because I was provided to the that side.
Okay.
By the way, there is insurance.
Right. Okay. Now who pays the insurance? What was the delay? It cost you delay in your project, right? Where did you get the other equipment from? From?
Kenya.
GDC Kenya. You had to pay them also, right? Then you had to wait for this equipment to go back to China and get another one. Now do you understand where I'm coming to? This is something to think about. Please, as you all go back, yes sir.
It was the Ethiopian Electric Power who bought this instrument,
Yeah.
but it has given a responsibility for the as a contract for another people. So he was expected to receive it at Aluto. So do you think that they have to escort that machine all the way from China to the drilling site, or? I didn't get your point.
Now he has opened a can of worms. Let me start there, okay? It's a very good question. Now, what I said in can of worms is, first is your contracting. Let me start from there, okay? I see all across again many of the places that I work. What is the first term of a contract? Lowest bidder wins the prize, right? Suppose I'm selling you this thing. This is costing $100. Somebody bids for this $100, okay, or 95. I can think that he knows what he's doing. Suddenly somebody comes and tells you, I can give you the same thing for 20. That should be a red flag. Does it happen in your? Am I making sense? This is the first part of your contracting thing that goes wrong. Let me start from there. If there is something that is costing $100, if somebody tells you, a cheap guy comes and tells you I can give this for 20, please think, can this guy for $20 give me the same thing? If he gives you, that means you're making a big balloon. Does it happen? Yes. You all don't have to answer me, I'll tell you yes. So first thing there, what is the contract now? The contract was? Right, okay. That's fine. There are different, so like there is delivery at the port or delivery at site, okay? So now the delivery at site was there, right? Now, has this person who is supplying that ever done his due diligence to see whether that thing can leave from the port and reach Djibouti, from Djibouti to here? You have to do something called due diligence, right? This person has not done his due diligence. Do you see that as a red flag? What do you say? Please.
Well,
Sorry.
go ahead. Are you saying that the transporter will be free from liability because he didn't know the nature of the goods he is transporting?
No. The thing is, when you make a contract, okay? Now, I'm making this contract. I'm the contractor. You are the client. I tell you I can bring this from this point to this point, okay? You should have, it is the client, before he signs a contract, is supposed to do a due diligence to know whether this person who is telling that he can transport this thing has ever done it in the past. Have you seen that happen in your life? Many a times I can tell you, there are many suitcase companies that come and tell you, oh, I've done this. But when you actually put it on paper, sorry, very, very, very sad to say, if this person who was transporting that had done this before, he would not have done that. Do you agree with me? Any of the drilling guys who have seen that thing transported?
I think the problem is with the supplier.
There you go.
The supplier didn't follow up the case strictly. And
Yes.
they give the very cheap transport company.
Solomon,
Yes. So
he is now talking.
it's
Thank you.
Project
Thank you.
management. It's the problem with supplier.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happens there? So what the thing is, this supplier says that he can do it, but he has never done this before, or he has never even taken the time. This is $2 million worth of equipment. That is number one. You've got time that you lost to delay in your project. Am I right from JICA side? You all have seen that thing happen, right? Before that?
I think the contractors that now we are dealing with,
Yes.
the Aluto project,
Yes.
what they requested is the contractor is going to be for any documents. What they do is they come and check where the site is, the roads and so on. They do
Exactly.
check first before they put their bid proposal so that they can do it properly.
Whereas if he's going to bid very cheap, he will not spend his money to come and do that. That is why when you look at quality of suppliers, you look at that has this person ever done this before, right? Can this person do it? Not by mouth, but on the ground, right?
I agree.
Yes.
That due diligence has to be done
Right.
whenever you give a contract to bidders.
Yeah.
But in the public sector, it is very difficult to do that because if you don't give contract to the lowest bidder,
Yes.
then you will be responsible. You will be called corrupted.
Right. So now that is where I think so.
That's the other side of the coin. You have to also look at it.
I agree. But now that's where regulatory framework can probably shed light. Gordon, you would like to add anything to that?
Well, I think that, from experience that I've seen here is that very little due diligence is done on bids. So the people they evaluate the bids, but they don't ever check to find out if the person actually has the qualifications they claim to have. And when that happens, in one instance that we had here just recently, we had bids that ranged from, let's say, from $300 to $900 for the same goods and services. The one for $300 won, of course, because it was a low bidder. I went back to that bidder's catalog and looked up the equipment that they claimed they had. They did not have the equipment in their catalog. I went to their sub-suppliers. I went through their catalogs, and I did not find the equipment in those catalogs. I reported it to the people in charge, and they didn't want to bother to check.
So this is now it comes down to where now there's a regulatory body that's going to be working, okay? This regulatory body, I think so, should have that mandate to be able to make sure that it is, one of the things let me tell you that before I go further, in every technical bid, every bid that the government puts out, you always have something called technical and financial. As per paper, they will say only after the technical thing is opened will the financial be opened, right? So now, but as soon as the financial is opened, the best technical guy gets gone because financially is the lowest. So what are you fooling yourself? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You don't always give for the lowest price. There is a mixing, okay? If you give 80% for technical, you will give 20 for the financial.
Right.
So you bring those together.
Right.
You have to set a lower
Yes.
threshold for the technical.
Right.
If 2 or 3 companies pass
Right.
that point,
Yes.
they are eligible.
Yeah.
So then you join your financial and technical
Right.
evaluation.
Yes.
So
But just now you heard Mr. Gordon telling I agree to what it is.
you have said that he's technically fit.
No, what happens is, again I'm seeing this, is most of the places where we have gone, because again I'm telling you this because I've sat on the other side of the table also, being a contractor. We have had submitted things that have been technically almost 100%. But when it comes to financial, all the technicals are then set aside and financials are taking preeminence. This is what I would like to see change in future. Do you agree to that?
I think the real problem lies.
Uh-huh.
The lowest price is very, very low.
Right.
You have the right to ask that.
You have the right, but does that happen is my question. That is something that does not happen, but let it be that I think it's a very good point that we should take, and I think so that's why I can take from there. Yeah, go ahead.
But it is not our responsibility, for example, how we bring this kind of thing.
Oh, sorry.
It is not our responsibility. That is the companies or the investor, the owner.
Okay, let me caution you there. As a regulator, you are going to be responsible for the life of a person. You're going to be responsible for the maintenance of the equipment. You're going to be responsible for the environment. Because that is the reason why this regulatory framework is put into place, because you have a guidelines. Am I right, Gordon, where I'm talking?
I think the
No,
regulator
but say-
will regulate the operation according to the law
Right.
and the regulations and directives in place.
Right.
That regulation or directive may not allow him to interfere in the company operations and tell him what contract you award to A or to B.
Yeah, but
What he looks at is only his outcome, because if he doesn't do the drilling according to the regulations and directives put in place,
yes,
the driller or the licensee will be responsible.
right. Now my question
Okay.
would be, is
The issue is, according to the transportation law,
right,
a transporter has to deliver the goods in the same condition
as if it's
in which he received it.
right,
He has to insure himself
yes,
or whatever.
yes,
So when he takes the contract,
Right.
the award,
yes,
he takes the responsibility
Right.
and he has to make sure that he is capable technically,
Right.
not only financially.
Right.
His financial is the lowest bid.
yes,
Maybe technically he has to take the responsibility. So the owner, just to save himself, can insure his goods, okay? But the transporter will ultimately be responsible for what he received from Djibouti up to the site, according to the contract.
right.
So we cannot really say I mean,
the mandate also to
the contract, the transporter really will be at ease,
Okay, now
because he didn't know the nature of the goods. When he receives the goods, whether it is cement, dangerous goods, or whatever goods he is taking, he is well aware, and he should be well aware of that. Of course, the owner has to tell, I am awarding a contract for transportation of a dangerous good,
yes,
as defined in the law.
law.
So then, he cannot claim that he didn't know the nature of the goods. He is supposed to have known it before he takes a delivery from the site.
And that's what didn't happen. So I don't want to.
I agree with all the precautions you are teaching me, but ultimately, even if you give those precautions, I don't think the transporter will be free from
But
liability.
the problem is that, you know, obviously the transporter is responsible for the goods to come in a good condition. However, it's your project that's going to suffer if they don't. So it's your responsibility to make sure that whoever is going to be transporting these goods does so in such a way that they actually can get to your site. Because if that truck falls off like it did, and you lose 6 months of drilling time, and as Sam said, is somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 a day. Unfortunately, when I talk to people here, I keep hearing the same thing. It's our project, it's our equipment, it's our people, it doesn't cost us a dime. That is totally false. Every single day you lose costs you money. If you would have built, if we would have done the drilling at Aluto 3 years ago, we could have had a power plant online probably by next year. We won't have a power plant online for probably another 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years. You know what that costs? It costs $1 million a week in revenue. That's what you lose, $1 million a week. So for 52 weeks times 4 years, how much money have you actually not received? By basically saying, no, it's our equipment, it's our staff, it doesn't cost us a dime to delay.
Now does everybody understand the seriousness of the situation? It's not my contractor, but I'm losing $1 million a day. If that doesn't matter, that's fine.
But I think the main point of what he was saying is that I agree with him, because it depends on the contractual agreement.
Right.
If you say clearly if there is a risk,
Yes.
then if you put in the contract, if you don't provide the equipment by this date safely, then there will be.
But Kifle, my question is, my question there, sorry for interrupting. My question there is, just because you spoke, had this thing there, how much can you put on that truck driver? You can't put $1 million, right? Every day?
Depends on the.
No, you cannot. If you talk contractual terms, you can only put the value of the item that is bringing. That's all that you can charge. Whereas, what has it cost your project? It has cost your project $1 million a day.
It is the contractor, if there was an agreement in the contract that he will pay penalty if he doesn't give on time and with good condition. If there is some agreement like that, do you think he would do the same? He would do it?
Okay, the gentleman. Yeah, it is not about pointing fingers on some specific project. It is to illustrate a mistake and to take the lesson from it.
Right.
You can avoid future situations similar to that what happened by putting some efforts in the specifics of the tender. Include or do a due diligence and try to avoid by going into the specifics of the formulation in the tender.
Yeah, I think there's two things. One,
Escort or review of the trail to site and all these details and accidents like this that entail a lot of damage can be avoided.
yeah, I think that there's 2 points to make. One is that writing good specifications in tenders is crucial. As crucial or more crucial is having good evaluation criteria for evaluating the bids when they come in, and then doing the due diligence as required by all responsible clients.
Okay, as we move on, Gordon showed you this one picture, but what you see there is site design considerations. This is actually a picture of New Zealand, where this used to be early 1970s, if I'm not wrong, where they used to have work during the daytime and go home at night. It used to be only working one shift. And what happened there is, this area has a lot of fumaroles in the area. So they thought the best place to drill is sitting right very close to the fumarole. So they came and did something, and they bought the rig in. Next day morning they come, the rig is not there. And if you want to see how big that hole is, you see this is a person standing here. These are things which you take into consideration is how do you plan your well sites. Then, when you are finished grading, there's one more picture here. I would like to show this one also. Now this is the footprint of a whole rig site. And see this red column block here? That is where the actual rig substructure sits. If you want to see how consolidation is done or how leveling has to be done on the rig site, make sure that this site is done the most proper way in terms of 95% compaction, because if this site is not compacted properly, I've seen some of the rig sites where you've got the rig, when it goes up, it's straight. Okay, when you start putting pipe, as you go deeper, this one starts tilting a little bit. And even if you tilt 0.1 degrees, now imagine going to a depth of 2,500 meters. That 0.1 degrees can almost make it like this. And then what happens? You start having problems like drill pipe getting stuck, Kelly bushing having problems. So things like that. That is why please make sure your compaction on the ground is very crucial. We did speak about cellars, so I won't spend much time here. Then here, drainage. Many times when we plan well sites, we do not plan drainage properly. So halfway through the well as you're drilling, you find that one part has eroded off. So that is why it's very crucial to make sure the drainage is done properly. And again, I took this picture just to show here. What happened there is, first the site was all prepared. The drilling contractor came and he said, he had a look physically, yeah? He had a look, both of them signed off, oh yeah, it's very good. Then the rig was brought into place. As the rig was brought in, they tried to set the mat on the ground. They saw it was like this. So what they had to do, they had to stop the rig move. And you see there, they had to go and bring more. They had to bring more mud, gravel, again re-gravel everything. Then we had to get a civil contractor to come and have a look at the site, survey it properly, then accept it. So as something for you all to learn, once you all have the site prepared, especially if it is your own drilling rig or somebody else's rig, have a civil contractor do the final survey. Then both the client, the operator, both of them sign off on it. And then you will not have these problems. Otherwise, you are going to be paying the cost of the rig just waiting while this is being done.
One point that we faced a problem in Indonesia in 2016 is when we were drilling the well, when the earthquake happened, and there was a problem with the casing. And then another point also, we were drilling in an area which was hot springs, minerals, and so on. The pad was selected, the casing was safe for 2 years. And then when the rig went back to drill, the casing was tilted a little bit, even half a degree. And then when we tried to drill deeper, there was a problem, stack pipe, lots of cost. So the seismic activity that USE collects will be very critical as well for areas, especially in the upper region, because that is very usual. So the seismic activity as well, put it there in case of some disaster.
Normally we have it in New Zealand and all. Also we've got seismic monitoring stations so that at any given time, even if there are small earthquakes, you can monitor them because they also used to affect nearby areas so that we know if there's any crack in the formation, this is the reason. Yes?
Yes, in our case, the selection of the well site.
Yes.
I have some intention in Ethiopia as well. They drill on the volcanic crater, 3,000 meters, on such a lake. And maybe they will be around here as well. They will can you think?
See, because one of the things is
the volcanic crater, is that feasible for you?
See, sometimes you do sit in a crater and drill, but also it depends on your monitoring. Because say like now in places like Kenya, Menenga is a crater. There are some other places where we have drilled very close to earthquake activities. Okay? In New Zealand again we had to monitor them because there was, because of drilling, actually it's happening in geysers, right? Gordon now, or Koso, where they were, remember they were drilling and we had cracks and then they had to do a lot of monitoring.
No, the geysers, the place had been shut down because of that.
Right, one of the places actually got shut down because of, and then again sometimes there is a blame game. Is it because of the earthquake or is it because of geothermal of drilling activity? Now that is the catch-22 situation where sometimes it's difficult to prove where is it because of earthquake or is it because you drilled that you're having these problems.
Sam,
Very good point. We haven't really talked much about that because we haven't talked about before you start drilling. But you should do a complete environmental monitoring for 1 or 2 years before you start your drilling operations, because only then do you have any information as to whether or not what's happening is caused by your activities or was a natural activity previously. We had one project in California that after they started drilling, they found that there was considerable amount of mercury in the water. Well, it turns out that even though they were basically shut down, the mercury was natural and had been in the water all the time. If they had done the environmental studies, they wouldn't have had that problem. So, monitoring of air pollution, water conditions, weather, anything that can go on, and microseismic is going to be more and more of a critical issue for people because people are becoming more and more nervous Projects have been shut down in Switzerland recently because of earthquake activity attributed to geothermal activity. The geysers in California, we lost about $40 million out of our federal budget because the Obama administration became nervous because there was seismic activity at the geysers. So these are critical issues to do before you start to drill.
And that is what we call nowadays, what you call baseline study. So in Kenya, on my project, what we have to do is we have to now do a baseline study, including actual pictures on the ground, flora, fauna, and everything, so that you know what is the situation of the project site before you started drilling. And this has to be done over a period of time so that you have got a background, baseline, and then you build up on that. Now, one of the things I would just like to point over here, I do not know whether you all are doing much of this here. Many times we do drill 3 or 4 wells from one cellar. So one would be straight, 2 would be directional. But one of the things you have to be very sure is check your spacing on your well site, so that your conductors should be able to accommodate the rig that comes on. Otherwise, you sometimes have problems. Oh, I've set this first one here, the second one here, and now I'm bringing the rig to move onto this. The rig can't go on. Now what do I do? Do I change the rig? Do I change the well? Or do I change the rig? Something has to be done. So this is something to think about. That is why we are, why I'm reminding of this is of planning. Now, this is a small place where I would like to spend a few minutes. At your rig sites, you find signs, right? I told you all, out of the many pictures I've got, one of the only pictures that I've got is this one person in the eye. It's actually from a safety brochure that I took. But this can happen too. One is, do you all have safety signs on the rig site? Many of you all will say yes. I do agree to that. Now, how strictly do you all enforce that? That is something that I see is missing a lot. Even that other picture is not very clear. I see around on our rig sites over here, people have been provided PPE, but they wear safety glasses somewhere on the roads in Addis, not on the rig site. Now, again, comes to PPE. You can go and buy personal protective equipment from anywhere. Okay? Normally, when it comes to regulatory framework, you look at the helmets, normally have embossing on them inside, which actually tells you the date of manufacturer, the ANSI qualification of the manufacturer, and things like that. If you see around whatever helmets you are using, and those have a lifetime also. Many times if you see, our helmets that we use are not following that criteria. So, is just wearing a helmet making sense? When you go back to your places of work, pick up your helmet and look at there are those 3 or 4 different emblems, and they tell you the date that it can be used up to. If it is not, now comes a problem of insurance. If you are wearing a hat that is not the right or have already expired, and if a nut falls on your head, who is responsible? I'll leave the question to you all. Did you all get my question? You've got a helmet that is already expired in terms of usage. You wear that, oh yeah, I'm following safety rules. I go under the rig floor. One of the nuts that is shaking falls down on my head. I don't want to tell what happens to the head after that. Who's insured? Are you insured? What matters? Does the insurance matter there, or does the piece of equipment that you're using matter? Think of this as you go back. And that's why I put this one here. Things like these, just having them on a sign has very little significance, as long as you do not implement what is there. Let me tell you a small incident before I go on to the next chapter. One of the things is, whenever we go to the rig site, you normally have a sign in and a sign out. It's like a muster piece. So what you do is, okay, sorry, I'll just use this one. So when you go in, you've got a board over there, and George's name would be written on that. When George goes on to that rig site, he flips it over. So suppose there is an emergency situation, and I'm looking for George. What if it is like this? Will I look for George at the site? This means George is out. This means George is in. Okay? George went to the site. It's like this. George has gone home for the evening. Comes back next day morning, he forgets to flip it over. It's his responsibility to flip it over, nobody else's. There was an accident on the rig site, there was H2S. Everybody else ran away, I don't know what happened to George. I come to the muster point. This list is there at the muster point. So the guy who's the safety guy is looking. Oh, everybody is white means everybody is out. Was George out or in? He is in. Would you look for him? No. Because he is, technically speaking, he is out. I will not look for him. But where has he fallen? He is fallen somewhere. Now do you get what I mean? One thing is having a sign sheet or a list. That's number one. Making sure everybody who comes onto the list, onto the rig site, has his name there. Now, it is responsibility of me, if I am going to the rig site, if I am on the rig site, I go and I turn it over. Because in an emergency, first thing is you have to save lives. That lives will be saved because the HSC person is going to look at there, who is in, who is out. If he is not in, I don't have to search for him. But whose responsibility was that? Now this is where passing the buck stops somewhere.
Before you go, I just got one question. You talk about the multiple well in one part. Is there any standard separation between the wells? Because it will depend the size of the rig and so on.
Normally, I would say for example, in terms of EEP, who will be having their own rigs, okay? Now you know what is the size of your rig. This is the same rig that you're going to be using for the next 10 years. So now you know what is your center of the well to the front of the rig, right? So based on that, you can move up or down. Or if it is not that way, if you are a private person who's going to be getting different rigs, make sure you've got a good clearance. Normally it's about 2 meters, but main thing is when you go for the next contract, tell the contractor whom you're going to contract to drill the new well, hey, this is my as-built drawing, and that as-built drawing should be accurate. If not, who's to be blamed? Is the contractor? No, because he came with his rig. This is what you gave him. So that is where as-built drawings have to be maintained properly. And again, that's where Gordon was telling, when you make your contracts, make sure that this is there in the contract, that this well has to be drilled in this well pad. There are 2 wells already existing. I want a 3rd well to be drilled. This is the space that you have. Is your rig able to fit into this place? If it's not, don't even bid on it. Make sense?
The other issue also that we faced in one project is there were wells drilled already, and all the separator were on that pad. Then we wanted to do a workover for one well, which has some casing problem. Then it was very difficult to bring a rig and do the job. So it's good to have a good long-term plan.
Yes. That is thank you for that. How long do you expect your wells to work? You drilled, which was the last well, LA10. How long do you want that LA10 to work? How long do you want it to work?
Plan was up for 6 months.
Oh, only?
The plan.
How long? How long? That's my question. Right, but normally your BPS, how long are they signed? Thank you. So that means that well or that site should be in an operational condition as long as the resource is there, and at least, as you said, at least for 25 years. So you please do not think of short-term plans. When you are making your plans, plan in such a way that you can use this site for the next so many years. So that means also maintaining that site, right? Access to the site has to be properly maintained. Things like that. So these are things that many times we think of a plan. Oh, this well, how long am I going to do? Only 1 year, 2 years. No. 25 years you're going to do. So what are the things that you do on that rig, on that well after you drill? After that, anything else that you do on that well for 25 years? I've drilled LA10. For 25 years, what will I have to do? Monitoring, yes. What else?
Well, we are using still in New Zealand since 1956.
What else do you do on that well? Monitoring, yes. What else? What happens to the well when it is flowing? What happens to the well when it is flowing? Does anything happen inside the well when it is flowing? What happens? What happens, I'm asking. Right. What are the problems that you have seen in your wells? Let's put it that way. Silica. Where did it come from?
Scaling.
Where did it come from? From the top or from the bottom? From the well, right? So you got scaling. So what will you do for that? Right, you can use chemicals, you can do workover on that. Sometimes you have to go with the rig, you have to do a brush clean out so that you can make sure it goes to bottom, you can come out, right? Then you got coil tubing you can clean out. Then sometimes what happens to the well? Any other problems that might happen in future? Have you seen casing holes? Holes in the casing. There is, right? How do you fix that? Right, but are there holes in the casing in Aluto? Have you done logging? So no holes were found in any of those. Okay, thank you. I'll touch upon that later. There are techniques we use, but those are the things that happen in a well over the life of the well. Sometimes you might have to go and replace some casing also, because if there are holes in the casing, you sometimes have to pull out the casing, put a new casing in there also. So these are things that happen over the course of the well, over 25 years, right? So these are things that you have to consider when you're planning your well at the first place. You have to think of all these things for the long 25 years.
If it's a binary system, you have pumps.
Yes, you've got sometimes the wells do not flow on their own. So you have to put submersible pumps where you pump the well out. Things like that. So then you have to also maintain the pump. That's under added things to that one.